Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue encore à la web diffusion de Libéral en direct. Nous avons le privilège, je devrais dire, d'avoir le général Leslie avec nous. Général qui a fait a keynote speech which was really inspiring. I mean, I wish that most of our viewers would have seen his speech, but I can tell you from the room, Bernadette, we saw people, you were the speaker with most standing ovations that we've seen so far. So, General, you really inspired everyone in this hall. Let me start with a question. I think what we decided to do, Bernadette and I, in this section was really to get a bit intimate in trying to understand your own personal journey. You obviously served our country in a very distinguished manner, and it'd be interesting for our viewers to understand what are the lessons learned from your military service and service to the nation that you will bring to politics now?
The big issue is the whole understanding of a team, l'équipe. Et puis, l'équipe, c'est tout. Alors, tous les membres des forces canadiennes, all the members of the Canadian Forces are part of a large military community. Within that, you've got subdivisions, but it's all about personal relationships, the trust and confidence you have in each other, and the willingness to sacrifice yourself to ensure that the team can survive. I've been blessed with working with remarkable Canadians, both young and not so young, and we truly have amongst the very best of our society that are serving in uniform, and also amongst the police forces and the first responders. I've seen them in action in floods and forest fires in Afghanistan and Croatia and Cyprus, and the list goes on. So the whole idea is that of team.
Building a team.
Building a team.
I want to pick up on some of the themes of your speech, and there was great reaction on Twitter to some of the specifics about government procurement, and you had some comments to make about that. Can you give us an idea of where you stand on that and why you feel critical
Absolutely.
About the current government?
So the current transition as quickly as possible. So there was a lot of money spent to good effect. But from 2010 until now, 2014, there have been so many projects that have gone off the rails.
Sure.
That have been essentially signs of managerial incompetence which know no precedent as compared to the last 50 years. And that is something that is worthy of addressing, and it means our troops don't have the right equipment, nor will they have it soon. The current government solution is to take $3 billion more away from D&D and push that off to the right by 3 to 4 years. Delaying the problem after 8 years in power is not fixing it. And let's put this in context. The Conservatives have essentially owned this issue for close to a decade, and it has not been fixed. And since the end of the combat operations in Afghanistan, a whole bunch of shipbuilding and jets and helicopters and trucks, and the list goes on, have not been competently managed.
Do you have any ideas to why? What is the thinking behind these bad policies?
It really has to do with the ability to responsibly manage fiscal resources. And if it's not being used for the purpose in which Parliament approved it,
Sure.
then surely the government has to go back to Parliament and explain to Parliament why it is that a variety of issues haven't happened. As to motive, one can only speculate. It is that blend of managerial incompetence. It's also perhaps the realization that by 2015, the Conservatives are looking to build up a war chest of tax dollars so they can wander the land and disperse that to all of us in an attempt to buy our votes. And one of their big sources for that is pushing perhaps projects off to the right so they can amass this piggy bank.
Sure.
That is playing politics with the lives of our troops, and it is deferring the equipment acquisitions they need. It's also denying hardworking Canadians the opportunity to benefit from those great paying jobs. And by the way, the further you delay them, the more they're going to cost the taxpayers. And the more you delay them, the less work there is for our workers to do in the nation.
Allons sur un volet personnel. Moi, nos auditeurs sont à travers le Canada, les gens vous écoutent avec beaucoup d'attention. Parlez-nous, il y a beaucoup de gens aussi, on le voit sur nos plateformes sociales, beaucoup de gens voudraient s'impliquer. Vous avez fait le choix, après avoir une carrière très distinguée au sein du service public, le choix de la politique. Parlez-nous un peu au niveau personnel. Comment ce choix-là est venu? Quelles ont été vos considérations pour faire le saut en politique?
D'accord. Alors, pour 35 ans, j'étais soldat, 4 ans dans les réserves et puis 31 années superbes avec les forces régulières. Et après que j'ai pris ma retraite, j'ai travaillé pour une grande compagnie canadienne, une organisation superbe. Et puis, dans cette période-là, j'étais plus en plus convaincu que je voulais retourner au service public.
C'est ça?
Il y a des discussions avec un tas de gens, des discussions avec des positions administratives dans des autres endroits et puis aussi pour entrer dans l'arène politique.
C'est vrai.
Et puis, mon décision était, les politiques sont conduits en Canada.
Je comprends.
Et puis, une des choses que j'aime pas, c'est le concept des attaques personnelles. Ouais. Et puis, j'ai vu un des partis au niveau fédéral qui a fait des tas d'attaques contre des centaines de gens distingués. Et puis moi, c'est pas canadienne, cette
façon de faire. Là.
Can we take a step back to your military experience? Because that's, you know, it was interesting hearing one of the speakers this morning, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, talk about how the personal narrative informs the process. And so we want to hear people's stories. And you had a very moving introduction from Lieutenant Colonel Harjit Singh, and he named you as a mentor. So what are some of the experiences that you've lived with him that really speak to public service?
Well, he's a great example of a citizen soldier, where someone who has a normal job volunteers to work on weekends or at night, in this case in the Army Reserve. He's done 4 deployments overseas, and he is the first Sikh Canadian to command a regiment in the Canadian Army, which is a great milestone and shows the strength and character of our nation. And people like Harj inspire me and others. So I receive positive energy from all those great people in uniform and our veterans, and all those who choose to contribute to put service before self. And of course, there's many more hundreds of thousands of Canadians who do that activity than wear uniform.
Sure.
So there's many more who are outside of the military or the police forces. And my travels around the world on duty on behest of the nation have exposed me to other communities which are far less fortunate than ours. And it just shows how much we have to offer the rest of the world through our young people, and not so young.
Well, speaking of people who wore the uniform or formerly wore it and who are veterans, you spoke also very passionately about that and about, yes, and the feelings that you have about how they've been left behind. What are you hearing, or what are your opinions on that subject?
All of us have a sacred duty to take care of those who've served, be they first responders, RCMP, police forces, and the military. And in the case of the military, with which I'm much more familiar, the Veterans Charter, which was introduced quite some time ago, 8 years ago, has some flaws. And one of the big flaws in it is that our young men and women returning, some of our veterans now are in their 20s, and they receive a lump sum instead of a lifelong pension. And what all of us need and want are choices. And there's no choice for those young men who desperately need our help, who've fought, in many cases, and been grievously injured for their country, but are still struggling to find their home because they don't have the resources they need to live their lives to a satisfactory standard which would allow them to actually grow and flourish despite the traumatic injuries either to body or soul that they've suffered. So we got to fix this, and we got to fix it right now.
No, I was just building on that. Obviously, you served in many areas. You said it this morning. You've been around the world. You've seen how the rest of the world sees Canada. And this was very passionate in the way you talked about it, that people look up to Canada. And what's great about Canada, tell us a bit about these experiences where perhaps you were on the field and on a bit more personal level, where you really saw that your Canadian values, being Canadian, made a difference in the choice you made abroad.
I will, I'll try, and my intent is not to criticize any other nation's contributions. So I think one of the big differentiator between Canadians and some others is not necessarily saying, here's how we're going to help you, which is more like an order, It's having the culture and the common sense and the decency to ask, how can we help you? Tell us where you think we can help, and then working cooperatively either through the soldiers doing the work, and it's not only soldiers. Sure. I don't want to sound too Army-centric here. It's also the airmen and women, and it's the sailors, and it's all the support personnel, and all the public servants as well who deploy on these missions. It's how can we help you achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve? How can we help build your peace, security, and prosperity? It's also the initiative and the flexibility that our Canadians bring to any complicated problem. And that's why there's so many Canadians overseas doing a variety of tasks at all levels, where they sort of turn out to be the go-to people to solve complicated problems without ruffling too many feathers, and always keeping in mind the larger goal of having that sort of compassion. Canadian soldiers, Canadian Armed Forces personnel have a huge streak of compassion and a desire to help. Having said that, don't kid yourself. Canadian soldiers and Armed Forces personnel will fight, and fight extraordinarily well, to protect the weak and the innocent.
Sure.
That touches on something that Justin Trudeau said in his speech Thursday night about diversity in Canada making Canadians a fair people, and being able to use those complicated challenges we have in our own country, but making us diplomats, making us more effective in terms of communicating with people in the field. I want to ask you about the shout out you gave to Marc Garneau in your speech. I know that you are going to co-chair with him an advisory panel on international affairs. Can you talk about what kind of work you're going to be doing for Mr. Trudeau?
Our role, Marc and I, we co-chair this panel, as you quite rightly identified, and so it's an international affairs role. It has subsets, so there's foreign policy, defense policy, security, international trade, immigration, refugees, and a whole host of other subsets. But the main thing is the thrill of working with Marc. I mean, he's an amazing person. He has done so much for Canada and the world. He's one of an extraordinarily small community of people who have the right stuff to go all the way up there. So I'm thrilled to work with him in that context. He's a naval officer, and as an Army guy, I respect that. Kind of wish he joined the Army. No, I'm teasing. He's a great parliamentarian, and he's also a very, very wise soul. So now our role, it's not to direct, it's not to try and put forward ideas which are cast in concrete. Our role is to help coordinate, to help energize, to throw out ideas so we can get that good Socratic dialogue going. And we're going to have people who will say, well, no, that's not a good idea, and that's where we arrive at the old Canadian compromise. A skill set, by the way, that our people in uniform have carried with them on all sorts of missions. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. And by the way, it's a completely unpaid job.
Well, good. Let me ask you, building on that, si vous me permettez d'aller en français, qu'est-ce que vous pensez vont être les thèmes majeurs sur lesquels vous aurez à vous pencher au sein de ce comité-là? Parce qu'évidemment, il y a des crises par le monde, il y a des choses importantes qui se passent. D'après vous, si vous aviez à mentionner 2 ou 3 dossiers particulièrement près de votre cœur, près de celui de Marc, dans lequel vous allez vous investir pour trouver la solution canadienne ou proposer une solution canadienne?
Je pense qu'un des plus importants est que le Canada est maintenant en danger de perdre leur voix dans la communauté internationale. Et puis, on a des liens avec le commerce, on a des liens avec du assistance internationale. Mais la chose le plus important, le plus urgent est que nous sommes en danger de perdre cette voix si bien respectée que c'était incroyable. Mais aujourd'hui, nous sommes presque invisibles dans les communautés et les systèmes d'assistance internationale. Et ça, c'est vraiment dommage. Alors ça, c'est un des appuis plus forts, plus immédiats. Et puis, vous avez aussi l'impact de globalisation, et puis le changement du climat, et puis les démographiques qui sont en train de se changer à une avancée remarquable. Alors, il y a beaucoup de choses à discuter. Beaucoup de choses de discuter avec les gens qui sont partie des comités et sous-comités.
So I heard you speak earlier about Justin Trudeau's leadership in particular. And so you're here at a Liberal Party function. why come to speak to Liberal Party members? Is it about Justin Trudeau's leadership? Is that what has interested you in the Liberal Party? Why the Liberal Party?
Well, I made my decision. I'm all in. And I made my decision because of the leadership that Justin provided.
And what about
vision
that
for Canada, his ability to have that sense of compassion while still making the tough calls, which a future Prime Minister is going to have to make. He listens. He includes others in discussion and debate. He can handle a multiplicity of really complicated issues. And I like the tone and atmosphere of the Liberal Party. And this is my first political convention, and it's like I'm back in a family, a large family. Of course, my family was here, absolutely.
Well, tell us about your family, because you mentioned them in your speech. You say they're all here, I think. And obviously they're a source of inspiration, and they have a lot of success themselves. Can you tell us about that?
Of course, my father was a soldier and ended up, as a general actually, and ended up running for the Liberal Party. Both my grandfathers were soldiers. One was a sergeant major, the other was a general, and ended up helping the Liberal Party. But it's not always so. I mean, we've had people who've joined the Conservative Party in the family roots. The main product of our family for generations has been soldiers, some political players. But it's that whole spirit of public service and wanting to contribute. And my desire is to help the Liberal Party in whatever way I can.
Sure.
Achieve a better vision for Canada. I'm obviously not entirely thrilled with the way that the current government is treating a variety of issues and people that I care very deeply about. And I joined the Liberal Party to try and help change some of those conditions that have been sort of left unresolved.
Thank you.
Well, you've been, General Leslie, you've been very inspiring to the people here, to the community online who's listening to us. Let me just close the interview with saying, like I said, you gave a very inspiring speech today. What are the key messages you'd like people to bring back? We have people from coast to coast listening to us. What are the key messages you'd like people to remember? Because yours was a very passionate speech that you gave, and everyone was listening to you very carefully. What are the key messages you'd like our viewers to remember from your speech?
Wanting to return to the community that's helped you, in which your family has grown, is a very noble and honorable activity. So I would recommend to anybody thinking about public life to do so, and you have nothing to fear. And yes, there's been a bit of unpleasantness. This is a minor skirmish in a fairly long struggle for a better, more Canadian way of interacting with political opponents who are not our enemies. They're not our enemies, so let's not try to destroy them or attack them. Let's debate the issue on policy. Let's not get too personal here. And I've seen some of that quite recently.
Well, there's a lot of honor in public service. And,
there is.
We need to feel that in politics as well. We need to feel that the politicians do it because it's public service. And so it's very inspiring to hear you speak in such a positive way. And that you feel inspired by your family, that they probably taught you all those great values of public service, and that you are going to mentor and teach others along the way. So we thank you for your interview. Merci beaucoup, Général
Merci
Leslie.
d'avoir pris le temps d'être avec nous. Nous allons retourner vers on va prendre une pause et on va revenir avec Libéral en direct dans peu d'instants. Merci.
So we're taking a short
Merci.
break. Merci.
Merci encore.